different levels. We are all being affected, but we are all at different levels. And depending upon our circumstances and situation, we may be impacted or respond to all that triggers going on around us in a different ways as well. And the other thing is, and this is also, I've heard quite a bit of this. A lot of men feel they will be too embarrassed to talk about their mental health. And this comes as a result of stigma. Even in the church, we don't talk about it very much. Oh, pray about it. You should have enough faith in God. I will soon show you how Jesus dealt with his own emotionally intense time. What did he do? There is a psychosocial side approach, side to mental health, and of course a spiritual side. And Jesus taught us to employ both to deal with it. So do not be embarrassed. In the same way, if you had a fever, the same way if you had a cut, the same way if you had anything, you go to the pharmacist or even talk to your family members about it. We should take the same attitude and we should adopt the same, employ the same attitude, the same approach in dealing with mental health. But as a result of cultural, reasons and how sometimes mental health have been portrayed in the media and other places, even in the movies and stuff, people feel too embarrassed to talk about their mental health. Of course, there's a negative, so some believe that there's a negative stigma around this type of thing. So 17% said, I don't want to admit I need support. For some people, in fact, the second point explained that. They feel that admitting that you need help, admitting that you're not feeling well, admitting that you're struggling with anxiety, admitting that you're struggling with very depressive symptoms and you're feeling sad or you're getting easily irritated or angered easily. You've noted this for the past couple of weeks and it's going through, you've been going through this for some time. What happens is they think that it is a sign of weakness, unfortunately. And 14% also say, I have no one to talk to. The truth is some don't, but you go in detail, deeper, you know that they could always find somebody to open up to. Almost a quarter of respondents said that they would not feel comfortable even speaking to a GP or any other professional. The main reason being that they worry it will waste their GP's time. And I tell them that the GP and other mental health and health professionals are trained to offer support to you. That is what they are there for. And this happened. Another excuse that I've heard several times is, I don't want to go to the GP. I know they're just going to give me antidepressants and all of that. Those are excuses that they have as well. And now it's interesting that the survey identified that men worry about wasting their GP's time with these sorts of problems. It does need to be made clear that depression and anxiety are perfectly legitimate reasons to seek medical care. After all, GPs spend 30% of their time dealing with psychological issues. And sometimes we feel that anxiety, depression, even other mental health related issues like OCD and social anxiety disorder and the rest, even having suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation are not health issues, but they are. And they are trained at least to offer a first aid support for you. And the longer you keep this to yourself, the worse the situation gets, because it is very likely that you may be adopting some coping strategies that may actually be getting in the way of the depression or anxiety or whatever mental health issues or emotional issues that you may be dealing with. Now, work-related stress and financial concerns really also ran very high. Respondents were asked about the biggest causes of pressure in their life. Work-related pressure came tops in the list. So I work with an organization that we provide therapy, mental health support for some of the top multinational tech companies in the world. And I deal with them every time. And this work causes a lot. Either losing a job, even being promoted to a new position can cause stress. And of course, some interpersonal relationship as well. workload, the change of work, as is happening to many people. When the lockdown came and people were encouraged to work remotely, many were happy because they felt, goodness, this is great. I'm going to save me the stress of commuting to work every day. But a couple months later, they just couldn't deal with it anymore. People are now craving to go back to the office environment, interact with your colleagues, with those little office banter and all of that. So the change in work also creates a lot of problems. There's long screen time, especially for those who have to work on their computers. The long screen time is also affecting people's sleep. It's causing a lot of headaches. It's causing a lot of stress and inability to, and people have become very, very easily irritated by the least of things. And this is leading to some level of anxiety as well. So finances, as I've said, is also an issue. A more reasonable pressure felt predominant, seasonal pressure felt predominantly by men aged between 35 and 44 years is the pending cost even of Christmas. So this is really timely. When you get into Christmas, men get very, very pressured as well. And of course, also a more popular concern felt by those living in London as well. So the study realized that the pressure even of those living in London is even higher. So the importance of, what is the importance of talking about your mental health? Now, as we said, 40% of men suffer from depression and anxiety based on the study that was done, men. Now, the service also highlighted that 40% of men, for 40% of men, it would take thoughts of suicide or self-harm to compel them to seek professional help. And for those who are Black and Asian minority ethnic groups, the BAME, some of them don't even seek help because of fear of discrimination. And so they keep this to themselves for a long time until the situation gets out of control before they go to seek help. And for quite a lot of men from the Black and Asian minority ethnic groups, what happens sometimes is they keep these mental health issues there for a long time until something happens and they are in court before the court now compels them to go and seek treatment. And that creates a lot of concern. So some of the men who go look for treatment even do that, based on the orders from the court. But thankfully, 60% of men polled have shared their feelings of anxiety with someone at some point. Based on the 77 who admit to suffering mental health issues, however, there remains a number of men living in the UK who feel unable to speak to a friend or professional about potentially serious symptoms. And that is why I want to really congratulate the church for taking this up. The more we are hearing about this in the church, the more we are hearing about this in our small group, Sabbath school group, the more we are hearing about this, even from the pulpit, the more the stigma is gradually chipped away, chipped off. And then men begin to find it easier to talk about this. Exactly, and this came as a surprise actually. Exactly a year ago, I was in Huddersfield. Pastor Ian Sweeney invited me to go to Huddersfield Church, and I did a presentation there, and the response was very, very, very important. So I want us to run through this. There are times, 3 times as many men as women die by suicide. So 3 times more men will die by suicide than women. And again, this age group is really, really in trouble. Men aged 40 to 49 have the highest suicide rates in the UK. So this should give us an idea of what we need to be doing. We need to be targeting our men and have time of our men. And I'm hoping that the men's ministry would also bring issues like this in the group to talk about among themselves. and hopefully we'll be very open, and then people would now be able to talk about what they're going through. Men report lower levels of life satisfaction than women, according to the government's National Wellbeing Survey. And the men are less likely to access psychological therapies than women. Only 36% of referrals to the NHS. NHS is maybe psychotherapy or counseling are for men. Nearly 3/4 of adults who go missing in the UK, 3/4 are men. And 87% of rough sleepers, homeless people, or rough sleepers are men. Of course, I know that the system pays more attention to women first, because I think there's an understanding that women could be more vulnerable when they are homeless. And some of them may have kids and all that. But look at it, 87% of rough sleepers in the UK are men. Men are nearly 3 times as likely as women to become dependent on alcohol. This is what I talked earlier on, using, very negative coping mechanism, alcohol, and 3 times as likely to report frequent drug use. So if they're not talking about it, they will find something else to help them to cope. And these coping strategies, worsen their situation. Men are more likely to be compulsorily detained for treatment than women. Men are more likely to be victims of violent crimes, 1.5 times more than women. Men make up the vast majority of the prison population. There are high rates of mental health problems and increasing rates of self-harm in prison. Now, some of the things that even land some men in prison in the first place, quite a number are also due to what? Mental health issues. So why don't they talk about the mental health? Societal expectation and traditional gender roles, it, men don't cry. As a man, be a man. When you see a man grieving or crying, we hear things like, you must be a man, be a man. In the church, we said, you must have faith in God, be strong. I remember I lost my mom last year, and it's amazing what people were telling me. A man of God, you must have faith in God. Why are you crying as if you have no faith? Don't you have faith in Christ? In a time when I was going through grieving, and because I know the importance of grieving and importance of crying, I allowed myself to cry. And some of the comments I know was coming not from a good heart, but it's because people just don't know what to say in times like that. All right. So we know that gender stereotypes about women, the idea that they should behave or look in a certain way, for example, can be damaging to them. But it's even more important to understand that men can be damaged by certain stereotypes as well. Men are often expected to be breadwinners, and to be strong, dominant, and in control. These are great. They are not really bad, but taking this a little too far can make it harder for men to reach out for help and also open up. Now, some research also suggests that men who can't speak openly about their emotions may be less able to recognize symptoms of mental health problems in themselves, and less likely to reach out for support. So again, as a result of this, they may be even more likely to use potentially harmful, coping methods, as I've already talked about, as to help them to go through these difficult times. While depressive symptoms are common among men and women, some studies have indicated actually that some types of depressive symptoms, such as irritability, sudden anger, increased loss of control, risk-taking, verbal and physical aggression, are more common in men who are experiencing depression than in women. And that is why I said that these things could land a man in prison. And also, that is why when I'm doing marriage counseling and all of that, I also check on their mental health. I do anxiety and depression assessment to be sure, because sometimes some of these problems in homes and in marriages and in relationships could be as a result of depression or even anxiety. And if both partners are not aware of this, it could further worsen the situation at home. And most of the time, the man is either kicked out of home and becomes homeless, or becomes a rough sleeper, or lands in prison, and that worsens the situation even the more. Men are also more likely to use alcohol and drugs. I've touched on this already. So let's talk about this. In 2017, nearly 6,000 suicides were recorded in Great Britain alone. Out of these, 75% were men. A staggering 75% of suicides committed were men. Suicide is also the largest cause of death for men under 50. So you can tell that we are in a very difficult situation, and we are even more at risk if we don't talk about this and make it easier for men to also express themselves. Higher rates of suicide are found among the minority communities, including gay men, war veterans, men from the Black and Asian minority ethnic backgrounds, and those with low income. Less well-off middle-aged men are particularly likely to die by suicide. As you can tell, they are more concerned about their job and finances as well. This may be because they experience loss of well-known risk factors for suicide: socioeconomic hardship, unemployment, relationship breakdown, lack of social support. You can read a lot, you can get a lot more when you go to the Samaritans website, a lot there. And if you're having any suicidal thought, and if you're being impacted even by this presentation, I want to encourage you, if you go to the Samaritans, I think the number is 116-123. You can give them a call. They are very nice people. They can offer support for you. But if you think the situation is getting worse, then you need to call the medical emergency line as well. Now, if you know somebody who is struggling with mental health issues, I'll share what to do with that person, how you can offer support in just a jiffy. And after that, I'm going to pause and get some feedback from you, because I think I've been hearing my own voice for a little while now. What can I do if I'm worried about my own mental health? I would say, talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. Number one, take responsibility for your own well-being. If you keep this to yourself, it's never going to get better. If you keep this to yourself, it's not going to get better. Talk to somebody. It is very, very important. Making simple changes as talking about your feelings, keeping active, and eating well can help you a great deal. Having enough sleep. Ellen White advises the first 2 hours before midnight, which is like 10 to 12, the sleep at that time is very beneficial to our body and our well-being. So sleep deprivation is a good recipe for very, very bad mental health and well-being. If you're concerned you are developing a mental health problem, talk to your GP. This is very important. It can be daunting. The first step can be scary, but talk to your GP. But most people find that speaking to their GP and getting help and support can make a big difference for their lives. And for those who are in the church, make use of your pastor. Talk to your pastor. Talk to your elder. If there's a medical professional in the church, talk to that person, because it will just be a very, thank you so much. That is 116-123, absolutely, absolutely. Talk to somebody, confide in somebody. Jesus did the same thing, and I'll be showing that to you in a moment. If you keep this to yourself, it's going to affect you. So if you're in distress and need immediate support or help, or you're feeling like ending your life, please call 999 or walk straight into your A&E and ask for the contact of the nearest crisis resolution team. They will be there to help you. I have referred several people for support for them. The people in that team work with people in very severe distress situation. You can just walk into the A&E of any hospital, they'll be glad to support you. There are several organizations that offer both practical and emotional advice and support as well. What about when you are, concerned about somebody else? What can you do? First, let me say, if you know somebody who is having suicidal ideation and you are with them, stay with them. Stay with them until help comes. But it is very, very important that you learn to listen. Listen. Listen without judging the person, and know when to interject. Don't be shocked if somebody says, I'm having suicidal ideation. Don't go and say, what? You, a whole elder? How can you even be thinking? Don't you know that the Bible says, God said he would destroy those who destroy? No, please. It's a very serious situation. Remain calm, maintain an eye contact, be supportive, be very empathic, express empathy. Things like, wow, really? You've been going through this for 6 months? That's really tough. How have you been coping? What have you been doing to help you cope? Don't say in the name of Jesus, you should drop that thought there. That thought, my brother, that thought is coming from the devil, and the devil shall never win. That is when some of us, our Christianity goes a notch higher. That is not the place. The time there is to be there for the person. You may call it what we call within the church circle, ministry of presence. I'm really glad that you have opened up to me. Anything that you think I can do to offer, any help that you think I can offer you, please do not hesitate. I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to walk with you until we find help and we find support. It's very important to show that you care. It is very, very important. Someone who is experiencing mental health problems may find it hard to reach out. So try to keep in touch. A text message or even a phone call will make a great difference. And that is very important. That's why I love the Sabbath school unit in our churches. So at least in large churches, when somebody is not coming to church anymore, somebody is not joining the classes in the morning, or they're coming very, very late. That should begin to trigger some concerns in our midst, to give that person a call, check in on them. We missed you. We should start saying things like, why haven't you been coming to church lately? Why have you been coming to church so late lately? And all of that. Some people will not even check on the person who is absent until the day the person returned to church, and it's like, oh, where have you been? You don't come to church anymore? What? No, we should be one another's keeper. Take the time, make that phone call. I missed you in church today. Is everything okay? Is there something I can do to help? And please ask twice. Ask, how are you, twice, because people who may be experiencing depressive symptoms may be afraid that they will be judged. They will be accused. So they will tell you, I'm fine. But ask again. No, I really want to know, how are you doing? Because I've noticed lately you keep to yourself, and I'm concerned about you. I really want to know. And that's very, very important. So there are so many many organizations there. You can even go online. They can help. And so do that. Reach out to them. Find out about local services, all right, such as talk therapy, support groups. There are a lot of them online these days that are, that are vetted. You can tell that they are legitimate. See if there are any specifically for men, that can offer support. Help them get help. Reassure them it's okay to ask for help. And for me, I say that it takes a brave man to ask for help. It takes a brave man to say, I am struggling. It takes a brave man to say, you know what? I feel like I'm at my wit's end. I feel hopeless. I feel helpless. It takes a great, brave man to do that. Jesus wept when he heard Lazarus was dead. If Jesus weeps, we should be free to let the tears flow without feeling like we are weak or we are unable to do anything. So you can also help them contact their GP, or even help them book appointment as well. While you are at it, please don't play a therapist unless you are one. Look after yourself, because it can also have some level of impact on you. Be careful how much you're taking in. Know when it is important to encourage your friend, your colleague, your man, your uncle, your father, your brother, that there's help available and that they can, get support from there as well. So let me pause here before I tell you about the church and what our attitude should be. Any comments, any question? I've been hearing my own voice for far too long and I don't like that. So can I have a question, a comment, contribution, disagreement? If you disagree with anything I've shared, can you feel free and share, please? You can either type it or just unmute yourself and throw it out there. I'd love to hear it. I'm told
I agree with what you were saying, because I've been visiting a brother from our church, and he's just felt isolated. And I've been going around there and spending an hour and just talking to him, and it's been really uplifting for him, which is really good. So yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, because if nobody visits him from the church, then he feels isolated.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so thank you very much for that.
And I want to thank you for taking it upon yourself. For all you know, you are the lifeline to that person there. And I thank God that you're allowing yourself to be used by God to reach out and to look at, we need to be our brother's keeper, literally in this context. We men need to look out for the men as well, because I believe that men can feel more comfortable opening up to, fellow men as well.
Yeah.
It's the moment, you know it already when you have a group of men, the moment one lady enters, it changes the dynamics in the group as well.
It sure does, brother.
I hope you agree with me, right? It changes the dynamic.
I do, 100%. Yes,
absolutely,
I do.
Absolutely.
Very much.
You're welcome. And so while we thank God that, men, who have their partners are able to open up to them, who have their fiancés and their wives, they're able to open up to them. But in situations where a man may be there but not have any significant other in their life, we men looking out there for each other, men's ministry should become, not just a ministry, but also a support group as well. So we check in on each other, especially in these tough times as well. Absolutely, we absolutely. I'll be glad to speak with you afterwards. I wouldn't mention the name. I'm taking note of the number there as well. So I'll be glad to speak with you. That's a private message there. Now, as a church, what is the attitude? What should be? What does Ellen White say about the mind and the mental health? What was her own struggle as well, as far as mental health is concerned? And what advice does she give us? I'm taking note of the time. Sister Verita, do I have 10 minutes more? Oh, no, I'm not sure it's 10 minutes, a little more than that. So
yes, that's fine.
Okay. I thought I think we are in time, right? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
What I'm saying is that just if you can just cue me along the line. I'm just keeping my eyes on the time. Yeah. So I'm gonna just run through this and share with you what Ellen White advice is, and also share briefly with you what Jesus's own approach is. And I'm going to make those as brief as possible because I want to take more questions from you. Okay, so the question here is, how do you address the comment from the person who says, "Where is your faith in God?" So the best way I can say that having faith in God doesn't mean that you will not go through trials and tribulations. The Bible makes it clear, in this world, we shall go through what? Tribulations. Even Jesus. So having faith doesn't mean I'm problem-free. Having faith doesn't mean I will not struggle. Having faith doesn't mean that I will not go through some painful times. Jesus himself wept. Jesus himself, even on the cross, said, my father, why have you forsaken me?" Sometimes when we go through intense moment of either depression or anxiety or some emotionally intense moment, even our faith and our hope in God can look dim. But we are encouraged to know that he is there all the time. Even when we don't feel like he's there, If you read, I like the Bible verse in I think is it Job. He said, "Look, I go forward, he's not there. I go back, he's not there. I look left or right, I can't find him." But he says, God is with, he said, but God is with him every step of the way. When he's finished trying me, I shall come forth as gold. It's one of my favorite Bible verses. And that's the reminder you need to give yourself at all the time, that intense moment can make the future look dim. In fact, in cognitive behavioral therapy, we call it cognitive triad, which becomes your view of yourself, the view of the future, the view of the world and people around you. People who are going through very depressive time have very negative view of themselves. They develop a high level of low self-esteem. They are very critical of themselves. They don't trust other people. They become critical of others, and they have no hope in the future. But for you, the Christian, the difference is that because he lives, you can face tomorrow, no matter how bad and difficult the situation is. So let me just go back quickly and share with you what does Ellen White says and what has been her own experience. Unfortunately, many Seventh-day Adventist members are not even aware that Ellen White herself struggled with depression for nearly all her life. For me, this should also let us know that while we go through those intense moments of hopelessness, helplessness, and we feel that life is not worth living, we should remind ourselves that even God's prophets, God's servants, they also went through tough times. In 1859, listen to what Ellen White says. "For years, I've been afflicted with dropsy, that's edema, and disease of the heart, which has had a tendency to depress my spirit and destroy my faith and courage." And then she says, she says she has no desire to live or pray for her recovery. She adds, why is it that such gloom rests upon everything? Why can I not rise above this depression of spirit? I have no health and my mind is completely depressed. We don't often hear this. I know she was gifted by God, but she was very human. And I am not surprised that Ellen White experienced depression throughout her life, because she had an accident. You remember, somebody threw a rock at her which broke her nose when she was a little girl. And as a result, she dropped out of school at the 3rd grade. And that affected her life. She lost a 3-month-old baby. She lost another son. And she lost her husband later in life. That's a lot to go through, as a human being. And so it is understandable that she will experience difficulties like this. And listen to what she says. Even as a child, this is what she did. And this is what many of us, unfortunately, we do. She says, "I concealed my troubled feelings from my family and friends, fearing that they could not understand me. This was a mistaken course. Had I opened my mind to my mother, she might have instructed, soothed, and encouraged me." And I know in most homes, sometimes parents don't have the time, or they don't listen very carefully to their children. I've heard situations where somebody says, "No, you better shut up, that we have nothing like depression in our family." And so I've spoken to young adults who have called in, they're afraid to open up. In fact, some young people think that their parents think that they're only seeking attention. Please, let's take this thing seriously. Now, if Ellen White, a very gifted woman of God, would say this, why should you think that you can keep this to yourself for the rest of your life? It's only going to burn you and get worse. And that's why I said, open up and share. Invest in your most important relationships and build trustworthy relationships that you can open up to as well. Ellen White again advises us in our home. She says, "Good health," that's the Review and Herald, October 31, 1871, is still very relevant today. Good health, and take note of the word, sound minds, pure hearts, are not made of the first importance in households. Many parents do not educate their children for usefulness and duty. They are indulged and petted until self-denial to them become almost an impossibility. They are not taught that to make a success of Christian life, the development of sound minds in sound bodies is the greatest importance, is of the greatest importance. So if you do not take care of your own self and your mental health, it can affect even your spiritual growth. Ellen White said this: I have had a depressed state of feelings today, unaccountably sad. I could not explain why I felt so exceedingly sad. This is the great woman of God and what she experienced. Ellen White acknowledges as well that individuals such as Elijah, remember at the point Elijah said God should kill him because he's the only prophet left and he was ready to die. Elijah, David, Paul, even Jesus, she noted, was not free from such feelings. I don't have time to talk about all of this, but I will share a bit about Jesus and what he did. If I were to find, this is one of my favorites, and for the men here, please remember this. Remember this quote. If, under trying circumstances, men of spiritual power, pressed beyond desponding, pressed beyond measure, become discouraged and desponding, if at times they seem nothing desirable in life, that they may choose it, this is nothing strange or new. Those who, standing in the forefront of the conflict, are impelled by the Holy Spirit to do a special work, will frequently feel a reaction when the pressure is removed. Despondency may shake the most heroic faith and weaken the most steadfast will. But God understands, and he still pities and loves. That's so encouraging to know that it's nothing new, that even great men of God, Moses, at the point he was begging God to kill him. So it is not new that we'll go through these experiences. She says, in the treatment of the sick, the effect of mental influence should not be overlooked. Rightly used, this influence affords one of the most effective agencies for combating disease. This is from the Ministry of Healing. And I'm going to be rounding up. The relationship, and this is very important. Sometimes we focus only on the physical well-being, and then we forget that the mental well-being is also heavily impacted. So the physical well-being and the mental health, they're like Siamese twins. Ellen White said the relationship that exists between the mind and the body is very intimate. When one is affected, the other sympathizes. The condition of the mind affects the health to a far greater degree than many realize. Many of the diseases from which men suffer are the result of mental depression, grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, distrust, all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. So let me take a comment here, and then I'll talk about Jesus's approach to Jesus's approach to dealing with, advice, and Jesus' approach that we can learn from. So, okay, somebody said, I'm a health ministry leader. Okay, please share your email. Absolutely, I'll share my emails with you, and then we can have a talk from there as well. God bless you, my friend. And then, of course, there's another comment here. I love this. It said, faith without works is dead. Absolutely fantastic response to that question that was asked over there. I say that in relation to health principles, absolutely. I agree with you, Veronica. I totally agree. It says when a person's body is out of harmony with health principles, you can easily go into depression. I agree. Take, for instance, 3 days without sleep, eat intemperate life, lack of water. These are these are recipes for depression. Just as the brother shared, our sleep time is so important, absolutely. And COVID has put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. I totally agree with this. And let me say that whatever you do for your physical well-being, if you take your physical well-being very seriously, it will have an impact on your mental health and well-being. But of course, things happen in life, and this can degenerate, this can affect us adversely as well. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Now, during the period of, let's look at Jesus' approach. During the period of intense emotional struggle, Jesus reached out for reassurance from both God and man. He recognized both the psychological, or what I would say, the psychosocial and spiritual aspects of, loneliness, intense anxiety, emotional distress, and then he sought to alleviate it with his actions. So I want us to look at what Jesus did. The night before Jesus' death, he did something. He went to the Garden of Eden. Sorry, the Garden of Gethsemane. So when you look at the Bible verse here that I put on the screen, I put it here deliberately for us to follow this. Anytime I talk about it, sometimes people feel a bit jittery. The Bible said, then they came to a place which was named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. So he told his disciples to sit here while I pray. Why did Jesus go to the Garden of Gethsemane? Why did Jesus go to the temple to pray? If you read about Ellen White's writings on the country living, Ellen White encourages us to be in touch with nature. Well, I can tell you that there are numerous research today, in fact, since 1983, in the early 80s in Japan, and this has been adopted even in the West, including the UK, where they found out that spending 30 minutes in nature, in the woods, along a stream or water, connecting with nature, listening to nature, touching leaves and trees and all of that, gives, so plants and trees emit some chemicals that have very positive impact on us. In fact, the study indicated that an hour or two, even an hour and a half in nature, the impact on the body is like taking antidepressant for your depression. And I'm not saying you should throw your medicine away or your drugs away and just go and stay in nature. But the research has indicated that when people were studied, they found out that their depression level dropped, their anxiety level dropped, and people who have high blood pressure, just spending that an hour a day in the woods drops. I mean, the impact was almost the same as taking high blood pressure medication. In Shetland, in Scotland, now that hospital there now is even giving what we call nature prescription as well. Now, people have taken this to another level, what they call forest bathing or ecotherapy. I want to encourage you to step outside every day, connect with nature, be in a green wooded area. It helps. Don't buy flower only to give to your sweetheart over there. It is good to have some plant at home. It could be vegetables that you could be watering every day. It could be some flowers that you can have, at your front porch or even in a pot. Do something to connect you with nature. In fact, that research also indicated that just even watching nature on television or going to maybe watching National Geographic, whatever, in nature, or all those stuff can have very positive impact on you. So that night, Jesus went to Gethsemane in the garden there and asked the disciples to sit here while I pray. Listen to what Jesus did. And he took Peter, James, and John with him. And he began to be troubled, deep and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, now listen to this. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch. So number one, Jesus goes to a place. Number two, Jesus has at least 3 people he could confide in. He didn't tell the 12. You need somebody in your life, brother. you need at least one person in your life whose number you have on your speed dial, somebody you can open up to. So Jesus now asked for support for the three disciples, and he poured his heart to them. The King of Kings now is telling his disciples this. And listen to what he says. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Stay here and what? Support me here. As a therapist, if a client tells me this, my antenna will just go up, zip, 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 because then I need to be careful. Maybe you need to get ambulance in place, de-escalate the situation and all of that. Jesus opened up and shared with the disciples. Then, after asking for support from his disciples, verse 35 tells us he went a little further and then fell on the ground. So, asking for support from his disciples, that is a psychosocial support approach to what? Situations like this, emotional stress. And then, of course, he went further and prayed. And what was his prayer? Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. For me, this is an indication that prayer works, but also seeking support also is very needed. Jesus sought for support, and he prayed as well. So I am very, very concerned about church members who say, oh, just pray over the depression, it will go. Just pray. Jesus did both. He sought for strength. He sought for hope from God. In fact, what he was saying is that I don't want to die anymore, but nevertheless, not what I will, but yours. My favorite part is all things are possible for you. So let me just pause here and say, I don't know what you're going through, but whatever it is, if you're having suicidal thought, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with low self-esteem, if you're struggling with depression, whatever it is, remember, with God, all things are possible. Jesus came back and he found his disciples not praying for him, not supporting him. They were all sleeping. And that's why I say, brother or sister, if you tell somebody, I will pray for you, please do it. For all you know, their faith may depend on that. Their faith may be depending on that. It is very important. So he asked disciples, couldn't you guys wait for just 1 hour? Not even an hour? That is very, very important. So Jesus taught us to be dependent on him at all times. But at the same time, we need to seek help as well. Some of my favorite Bible verse is here. It says in Philippians 4:6-9, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication. So pray and also seek help. With thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And listen, God is talking about anxiety here. Do not be anxious. Trust in God. Studies have also shown that, in fact, 2018, the research was done by Harvard University School of Public Health. And they found that people who pray regularly, people who pray frequently, and so this study followed young people for about 8 to 14 years. They were following this young people, and in their adult age, they followed them, and they found out that people who prayed frequently, people who attended church services frequently, they did better in managing their mental health and well-being. They did better in managing anxiety and depression. So those of us who will say, oh, don't worry, I'll be with you in spirit. Please, you are not a spirit. You are flesh and blood. Be together. Some of these forums help. In fact, I say when we meet together, when we sing, and remember those days when after church we have potluck, when we hug each other, when we hear good songs from the choir, when the preacher preaches to encourage us, when you shake hands with that brother or sister and say, how was your week? That is a form of free therapy, group therapy. We don't pay for it, all right? You don't go for any therapy where you are fed and somebody's singing for you. But when you go to church, it is a form of therapy. It helps to boost your immune system. It gives you a sense of belonging and connecting. It gives you a sense of security as well. There's a huge therapeutic value in our religious practice, especially as Seventh-day Adventist Christians. That is so important. And the Bible says here, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and mind through Christ Jesus. Think on these things. Meditate on these things. Now, I love this part because I am more inclined to CBT. And in CBT, we believe that what you think, your thought affects your mood, your emotion, and affect your behavior. To change the way you feel, in fact, it's difficult to change your mood at will. But to change your emotion, your mood, you have to change your thoughts and focus on, change your thought. I don't have the time to go into all the details, but this Bible verse here advises us on things that we can focus on. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate. Some versions say, think on these things. The things which you have learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you. Thank you. I'll take some more questions now while I leave this on the screen for the meantime. That phone number there, you can still reach me on WhatsApp on that, but if you call directly, it won't come. I will give my other number as well, but you can contact me if you so wish via that. Now, absolutely, I've seen some really nice comment here. It says, be ye transformed by renewal of the mind. Absolutely, God said it, indeed, indeed. In order to transform our mind, we must first renew our mind. This is our thoughts, but fearful, defeating thoughts. God tells us to see things as though it were. Look over what is happening to see what we want to. I totally agree with you. Can I take any question, any comments from you? Any question, any contribution?
I've got another question.
Yeah.
Last week I was watching television and I totally agree with what you were saying about nature, because people were actually going into the woods and connecting with nature, and it built their immune system up. They were getting connected. So all what they were worried about, it went out the window because their mind are all focused on what's going on, the trees, the birds singing, little animals, hedgehogs, all that is absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. And let me also quickly add here that, volunteering does help a great deal. So your sleep, your physical fitness is so important, even if just going for a walk. I know it's winter, we all are cocooning from the cold, but it'll be very good. Jesus walked a lot with the disciples. They walked in the cornfield, they walked in places. Step out there, get in some fresh air, let your lungs open up, okay? It changes your mood. It is so important, I can't overemphasize this. And please again, this is not just to the men, invest in your most important relationships. And in these times, your most important relationships are three: faith, family, friends. Faith, family, friends. Pick up the phone, check in on somebody, okay? Pick up the phone, do that. And while you are at it, you are taking care of yourself as well. And when you offer support from somebody, you feel supported as well. And so don't forget those three words: faith in God in these tough times. The second one, family. Please make your home, your environment very conducive for your family, your kids, your brother to be able to talk. Be compassionate with yourself and show compassion to others as well. The more caring you become, the more caring they will be to you as well. And please step out there if you need help. You can talk to me afterwards. If you need help, Sister Veredo can, I'm still not pronouncing her name correctly, forgive me. She can post my number publicly there so that anybody who wants to contact me can do that. And God bless you, my dear friends. God bless you. I could go on and on and on and on and on, but I think we've just scratched the surface. But I want to thank the Health Ministry Department. You can tell I'm very concerned about men's mental health, and thank you for taking this up. And God bless all of you indeed.